This is a bit of a, I have to say, we've been given a bit of a prime time slot here in the AoC conference, down in the bowels of the earth. It's kind of competing with Downton, to be honest, today, in terms of the kind of slots, the kind of other sessions that are running today. So thank you for those people who have come today. I think we're an interesting mix of colleges, colleagues from across the awarding organisations as well, so a good briefing session for them as well. We want to make this as kind of interactive as possible, so you will find on your chairs a voting panel. And interestingly, as I say, with an interesting mix of people, some from other awarding organisations, some from colleges, some from other institutions. It'd be interesting to see what how the voting looks actually as we answer the questions during the course of this presentation. So during the course of the presentation, I'm going to just kind of ask 4 or 5 questions, just to get your input, your views on what are the kind of things that we need to be thinking about as we redevelop. So I'll give you the instructions when that happens. And at the end of it, we have an esteemed panel of experts who will also be here to answer any of your questions. Please do take advantage of our esteemed panel. I should say as many times as I can, please do. And they will obviously give you an opportunity to ask questions on anything that isn't made clear from what I've been saying. So, just by way of introduction, I'm Rod Smith. I'm the Managing Director for Pearson's BTEC businesses in the UK, and I'll be leading the session today. I think the context for this was one that was set to us actually at Pearson about 18 months ago, when Frank Blockland came to visit us as a senior management team and said, Pearson, you need to understand that actually you are the guardians, the custodians of the signature qualification of the FE sector, and with that responsibility, with that, if you like, that role, comes huge responsibilities. This is a sector that's having a lot of change at the moment, a huge amount of change and inputs from all sides. But actually, you, as Pearson, as the custodians of that guardian, of that signature qualification, need to stand next to the sector and help us to respond to those challenges. We've tried over the last 12, 15 months or so to start that process in earnest, and I think it will become a lot more clear now, as you'll see lots of outputs from this activity, around kind of louder than words, is that as we redevelop our Level 3 BTEC, it is very important that we engage properly with the sector, that we realise that actually what we're developing here is not a qualification that we want to launch into the sector, but a qualification we want to launch with the sector. And to that end, we've so far, about half the way through the process, we've run about 30 odd focus groups with colleges around the country, with heads of department, with quality nominees, done a lot of work with universities, one of the key stakeholders for you as colleges around the delivery of BTECs, and with students themselves. We've engaged with around 3,000 heads of departments, quality nominees, students and HE admissions tutors, but we're about halfway through. Because as we look now at the challenges that were raised today in the keynote speech there, it's quite clear that as we look forward to what we need to do with Level 3 around those challenges, there's still a lot of work that we need to do to work beyond getting the answers to the questions. But before I kind of go on to that, why is it worth it? Why is, if you like, it's so important that we understand the role and value of the BTEC Level 3 qualification in the college sector? Well, there's an awful lot of assertion and rumour out there about the government's attitude towards vocational qualifications, what the value of them are, what they'll do. We actually see them, and we have a lot of evidence to support this, that actually they are fundamental to the value that the sector provides in the education system. We know, for example, BTECs are good preparation for university. The Wolf Report's very clear about this, that at Level 3, the BTEC is about the only qualification that has that equal credibility with both employers and universities. What I find very interesting, we've just done a very major piece of research with London Economics actually, that shows that actually if you do a BTEC Level 3, you are marginally more likely, I have to accept it's marginally more likely to even get a first in your degree when you go to university with those. And that's a very interesting statistic, because quite often vocational learning is put into a kind of secondary category in terms of its preparation for university. Actually, when you look at over 80% get 2-2s, 2-1s and first with BTECs when they go to university, it says a lot, I think, for the kinds of skills and capabilities that the BTEC helps you develop in your students as they go through the FE sector. Over 100,000 learners went to university in 2010 with a BTEC as a significant part of their curriculum offer. We know that BTECs are good preparation for employment, and this is all based on true, hard evidence that we're very happy to share. You are more likely to be employed if you have a BTEC, whether you have just an A-level or a suite of A-levels in your portfolio. And actually, and this is an interesting one, it's very interesting, is actually you're more likely to be a manager or senior official in an organisation if you have a vocational qualification of BTEC at the heart of what you have. Now, I think that's very interesting what it says about managers and senior officials, actually, in terms of those that actually can manage in a practical way organisations and help them grow. And BTECs actually add value to the education system. For every learner that the Exchequer funds on a BTEC at level 3, they make £45,000 more in their lifetime from money paid back to the Exchequer. And actually, this is the really exciting thing for me around the issue of social mobility, is that actually BTEC creates a second chance for many returners to study. Almost 40% are over 27 when they complete their undergraduate degree with a BTEC as part of what they have. I think the criticality there is about the way that great vocational qualifications can create that second chance opportunity for learners. So that's just some facts. I thought I'd throw that stuff in. Let's get on to the stuff about what on earth are we going to do about BTEC looking forward, because we can't actually be complacent about this. In those interviews with over 3,000 people, at the moment some 60% are either very satisfied or satisfied with the BTECs as they currently stand, in terms of the way that they are really help you deliver what you need as a sector to help people develop. But 30% are in that kind of rather, neither satisfied or dissatisfied area. It's not that they're unhappy with what they're doing, but actually they think that with the challenges that we have as a sector, that actually we need to keep on developing BTEC and keep on improving the perception and their use in colleges. So that's what we're trying to do through this whole kind of consultation process over the next 15 months or so. So I mentioned to you earlier on, this is part of it. So we will be answering some questions. I don't pretend for one moment that these questions and the answers that you give will necessarily, change the world. But nevertheless, we are, this is indicative of the kind of approach we're trying to take with the redevelopment of the sector. So as I come up with the questions, I'll be asking you to press the buttons on your keypad in front of you and give me your view on these questions, because these are some of the fundamental questions that we've got to address as we redevelop BTECs for the future. Before I do that, I did mention the esteemed panel earlier. I'd just like to probably take a moment of this just to make sure that you will be hearing from them, not just me during the course of this session. We have Cathy Walsh, who is the Principal and Chief Executive of Barking Dagenham College. We have Dawn Whitmore, Deputy Principal for a new college, Nottingham. Steve Besley, our venerable Head of Policy from Pearson, who many of you will know, and Senior President of the Pearson think tank. And we have Mary James, who's our Head of BTEC Redevelopment at Pearson. So we will be hearing from them, and I'll be very interested to hear some of their views on some of these questions later as well. So there's an awful lot happening. We know that. I'm not going to go through all of this. The sector, I think, has probably never had so many issues that it needs to grapple with. Certainly in the time that I've been involved in the sector, over 20 years. So what is it that we need to do to help the sector respond? Well, my first question to you, it's a very straightforward one, is we develop the fundamental purpose of BTECs. We have to make some decisions about exactly how we are going to position them. So, first question. Your view on the fundamental purpose on a BTEC level 3, and actually I don't mind if you answer this around any kind of level 3 vocational qualification as well. In redeveloping the BTEC next level, level 3, we should give greater focus on progression to university and or further study, to employment, or both of these as far as possible. So, hand over please to the executive. If you could give me your views on what should we be focusing on in terms of the way we redevelopment. Preparing people for progress into university, into employment, or both of these as far as possible.
Rod, is it exam conditions?
You are allowed to copy your neighbour. So I suppose it's not really exam conditions now. I suppose it's not very probably. So okay, I mean, fundamentally, obviously one of the big challenges that we have in the redevelopment of BTEC is, what do you do? Actually, there are fundamentally two purposes, and we believe very strongly that around BTEC is one of those qualifications where it can deliver both of these purposes. Is that how do you do something that's going to work to help people prepare for further study, prepare for university, but also be ready for employment. And the decisions we have to make all the way along the line about the content, about the way we assess, about the way we quality assure, about the way we engage with employers and universities to deal with that. But sometimes it makes for a very difficult balancing act between those two things. But I think that if we were to leave that behind, we'd be making some fundamental mistakes about the value that BTEC can add, not just in a single context and for a single set of learners, but for the full ability range and for the full types of learner. So, moving on. We know that there's some massive issues that we have to get right. So we're looking at the moment of redeveloping our level 3 BTECs, probably for first teaching from September 2015. Maybe some that we're going to do slightly earlier than that, some we're going to do slightly later than that, but nevertheless, fundamentally we're looking at a very significant redevelopment programme because there's quite a lot of things that we need to do, things that we need to respond to by way of the inputs into the sector. So funding needs. We know that the study programme is going to have a profound impact, the implementation of the study programme is going to have a profound impact on the types of programme that you're going to be delivering. Well, actually, how do we structure our qualifications as part of a broader learning programme? So it may well be a substantial qualification, but has the flexibility to be able to deliver personalised learning, study, experience outside that as well. So clearly we've got to really look at, with our BTECs, of being able to help you as a sector to develop personalised approaches to the study programmes. We clearly need to track what's going on around the whole apprenticeship redevelopment and the future of the SACE framework. At the moment, a number of our BTECs are actually technical certificates within an apprenticeship programme and are clearly funded by both SFA around for both post-16 and pre-16. My acronyms get a bit dodgy sometimes, please excuse me. So what are we going to do to ensure that that dual funding continues in the redevelopment going forward? And clearly, what are we going to do about working with employers to help you work with employers as well to develop programs that can access those learners and deliver the kind of employer accountability that we're going to have to all do in terms of what we deliver. So, what are we going to do? Well, clearly we need to develop qualifications that are flexible and have a range of different sizes so that you can actually build personalised programs around that. We need to embed things like work experience. A very interesting quote from Dawn earlier on when I was talking to her about she prefers to write experience of work rather than work experience. And I think there's a lot of interesting thoughts around what is the best way to build experience of work rather than that kind of rather specific definition of work experience that many people feel that they get in schools, for instance. Numeracy and literacy, if someone in the room knows the answer to numeracy and literacy post-16, if they could stay behind afterwards. There's a lot of money in royalties for you if you can give me the answer to that question. But clearly, there's a very, very important debate around how actually the sector can be helped to address what is a bit of a hospital pass in some respects about addressing the issues of literacy post-16 in terms of what they've inherited from schools. Study skills, of course. How do we embed those into some form of final project? And how do we provide the specialist options and units to go alongside the BTEC for you to be able to do what you need locally? Clearly on the funding, we have to show progression. Clearly we have to get the SFA to fund post-19 and pre-19. And clearly we have to make sure that whatever happens around the apprenticeship framework, we are going to be able to give you the solutions for that as well. So, my next question is, your view on study programmes. So, will the study programmes, in your view, radically change the curriculum you offer in your college, will change the curriculum somewhat, or will have very little impact on the curriculum that you offer in your college? Vote now, please. It's like, what is it like? Who wants to be,
Did I vote too early?
You can change your vote, by the way. You can change your vote, as long as it's not down to naught. So, it's interesting, I don't really know this yet. I don't know what the answer to this is yet, actually. I mean, clearly, overwhelmingly, that most of you are referring to probably a limited or negligible impact. I'm not quite sure yet we as a sector know the answer to that entirely. Yes, I know that there's a lot of work that's been done by the DFN or the DFE on the implementation of study programs. And quite clearly, there are great opportunities, I think, around that flexibility and funding programs that I think colleges will work their way through over the next couple of years. And we just need to really work very closely with you on how that can actually be supported by the type of qualification that you're offering. I don't know, it's interesting. I think probably this is where we are at the moment. I think there's a sense of, actually they've been introduced, it's not fundamentally making a change in the small term, but I think over time, I think there could be quite a lot that's going to come through on that. But we'll see. Standards, quality and support. Anybody that was at the Matthew Hancock speech earlier, that this concept of quality and standards is coming back again and again. And what does quality and standards mean? Well, it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And I think that, again, this is an area in which we're going to have to work very closely with our partners to help them with articulating what is the quality provision that they're offering and how does that embed standards. Well, quite clearly the context for this is very, very powerful at the moment. The new off-quality inspection criteria are now having a profound impact on the way that you're delivering programs and looking at teaching and learning and leadership and management in your colleges. And actually, that's working its way through now. I think a lot of challenges that we need to work with you on in the way that you plan your curriculum. The Key Stage 5 performance measures, there's just been a consultation announced today I believe, Steve. You were saying around the around looking. Well, certainly they've announced previously that there is going to be a Key Stage 5 performance measures consultation program. And what is going to define that? What's the impact that that's going to have, not just on schools, but I think also on all post-16 institutions? What is the definition of a great level 3 qualification that's going to make a difference to help people progress? Well, that's going to that's going to be a very, very strong direction, I think, of travel for the DFE and others for us to be able to respond to. What can we do around standing next to teacher-led assessment? There's a little bit of a kind of criticism and ambiguity at the moment about what is, the quality, the reliability, if you like, not the validity, but the reliability of teacher assessment. Interesting, the context for that is around EBCs and examinations and the controlled assessment that's been run recently in GCSEs, but it's very clear that that whole shadow, if you like, of criticism around it being discriminatory against ethnic minorities, that one caught me a bit by surprise last week, I have to say, but certainly the reliability of teacher assessment. Well, okay, we believe fundamentally in the validity and reliability of teacher assessment. And actually we believe that it does things better than anything else by way of really understanding what the flexible and personalised approaches to learning and progression are. But actually what can we do to help the sector address the implied criticism of that as a methodology? Grade inflation. Well, grade inflation, you probably think about grade inflation in the context of the criticism there is of GCSE results year on year, but actually, increasingly, that's going to be applied also to vocational qualifications and degrees. Arguably, in fact, there's been more grade inflation in degrees over the last 15 years than in any other part of the education system. So actually, this whole focus on how can we be clear about the standard, the level, is something we're going to have to work with you on. But finally, obviously, what we have to do is to really help you articulate what you do so well as a sector, which is to deliver progression for those learners, that second chance for learners, that deliver vocational, academic and employment and employability outcomes. Vocational qualifications in the FE sector clearly do better than anybody else. I'm not going to go through all of these, but these are the kinds of things we need to work with. One of the things I'm most interested in is about empowerment. A big piece of feedback that we've had from talking to colleges in the last 18 months is actually that what they want is obviously to be trusted, to be empowered to make the judgments about what they need to do for their learners. But at the same time, actually, there need to be some stronger rules in place and some stronger guidelines around the way that these qualifications need to be run and assessed, etc. And actually, this is not about taking away the flexibility of the programme. This is about ensuring that actually the way that a programme is being assessed and moderated is going to be the same in one part of the country and another part of the country. So there is a standard that you can stand next to, because actually the way that they're being run, the way that the programmes are being structured is actually consistent. Actually, interestingly, even within a large college, that it is consistent across the whole organisation. So, your views on a very particular issue, external assessment. So, and we'll get into this. Should the BTEC Level 3 Next Generation contain an external assessment of some form? Not necessarily, some people are furiously pressing already, not necessarily an examination, not necessarily an exam, but some form of external assessment validation. Vote now, please. Yes, in all major subject areas. No, yes, if it's appropriate for the subject or sector and progression to further study. No, not at all, or only in a few exceptional cases. Vote now, please. I didn't have over my dead body as an option. But you can take that as number 3. This is, that's fascinating, isn't it? And actually, to be honest, this kind of really, really reflects the kind of feedback that we've been getting over the last 15 months in the first stage of our consultation. And to be really clear about this is why we're going to have to do this very, very carefully. Because quite clearly there are things that vocational qualifications do by way of second chance opportunities, or just opportunities for those types of learners that don't necessarily thrive in exam conditions or in that kind of approach to assessment. But at the same time, the sector is saying to us that in certain areas, the credibility and validity, even if it's only a media story or a university recognition, is something whereby actually they're not averse to having a proper, appropriate external assessment included. We haven't made our decisions on this at all yet, and this is why we have to continue to talk sector by sector to people who are engaged in delivering these programs to really understand this. Well, what's interesting, of course, is that external assessment is not new to BTEC. Actually, there have been, over in its history, times when the sector has delivered the final projects and external assessments. Not much is that new when you think about it and you come back to it. But actually, what's critical is that whatever we do, we develop in a way that is going to ensure that they are still the right qualifications for those learners who won't necessarily thrive in those conditions. But where external assessment will add credibility to it, will help with progression to university or into employment in some cases, we do need to be open to that scenario. Very, very interesting dynamic appearing in that area, I think. Finally, teacher assessment. We really think it's important that we work alongside all our deliverers on the whole issue of how do we improve teacher assessment, supporting teacher assessment, and possibly actually supporting the articulation of the value of teacher assessment, because we do believe in it fundamentally. So, how should we do this? Should we provide CPD and deep training alongside the qualifications? Should we see a lot more sampling and verification of learner work, and then working with deliverers on what we can learn around their assessments and that help improve them? Should we be providing authorised assignment briefs, which you can choose to use or adapt for your programme? Or should we be providing much more exemplification of the grading of learner work? Or something else? All of them. Well, if all of them, you might want to press 5 here. So your vote, if we could hand over, so if you can make your vote now, please. Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting. Again, slightly not necessarily what I've expected, but that's there's no doubt, I think, that there is a trend out there at the moment, a series of drivers out there at the moment that are looking at the whole area of CPD and training and support more generally for the sector, which I think is one that we really do need to understand and respond to. I think, actually the tradition of here is a qualification, it is being passed by God, by Ofqual, it's handed over to you and we will talk to you in 9 months' time and tell you whether you're doing it right, clearly is no longer the way in which there is an expectation in our market for the way we should be behaving. Now again, so this whole area of actually what can we do to not just police teacher assessment, but to help develop it as a skill and a competency that should be widely recognised, possibly even accredited in the sector. Okay, very interesting. So, I won't go through this one because I'd like to actually hand it over to move on and get some feedback from the panel on some of the things I've raised. But clearly, what we have to do is look at ensuring that we keep the BTEC as the qualification that will make you more employable, but also the qualification that will help you progress in your life onto further study. We clearly have got to respond to the challenge around English and maths post-16. The challenge that's constantly being thrown at the sector without necessarily clear ideas about what the solutions are going to be. We have to keep this progression to university, this progression to employment, but also help you as a sector access those learners at level 2, possibly at 14. Or those that are doing BTECs at level 2 in schools, but probably doing far smaller qualifications going forward than they have been up to now. So what can we do to work with you as a sector about helping you take those students, top them up, help them make the progress and the step up to level 3? So, my last question, your view of the challenges ahead. Of those things that I've presented today, as a sector, what do you think is your biggest challenge, amongst many, and maybe it's another, that we need to think about with regard to working with you? And I appreciate this is very much the way that we interact with you as a sector, and many other things that are obviously critical to you. So what is the biggest challenge in delivering a high-quality 16 to 19 study programme? Raising the standards of literacy and numeracy for those who have not achieved the level 2? Finding quality work experience to run alongside your programmes? Funding and budget constraints. I'm tempted to almost say, I know it's always funding and budget constraints, but nevertheless, some of these things have got very profound impacts on the way you're going to have to plan your curriculum and resource it. Competition from other providers, PTPs, schools, etc., or something else. Please vote. Can you hear me? Please vote now. Yeah. That's great. I'm pleased about the 0% on competition. That seems to me, competition is healthy, should be healthy, I guess, although it has to be fair competition and the playing field has to be level. But now let's look at that, literacy and numeracy. And a year ago when I was at this conference, there were sessions on literacy, numeracy, post-level 2. There were people talking at it, there were challenges that were being thrown down to the sector. I really don't know if we know yet, as a sector, how we are going to address some of those issues and really make a difference fundamentally to it. And for me, this is in all the consultation we've run so far, this overwhelmingly comes back again and again as one of the big issues that they want support on. How much do we need to embed literacy and numeracy in our BTECs? Contextualise solutions, but actually at the same time, let's not overload the BTEC. What are the standalone approaches? What about functional skills? All these things. This is the area again and again that the sector comes back to. Okay. So, it doesn't end here. That wasn't all the answers. I'm sure, there's an interesting mix of people in the room. But nevertheless, what we will be doing is launching very, very soon a major second phase to our consultation programme. It is a project which is trendily called co-creation, but a community that we're going to be setting up where you will be able as a sector to ask us to engage with us, to join the community to actually help us make the final decisions around what BTEC needs to look like in the future. I hope that you will want to take part in that. There's a card at the end if you are interested in becoming an ongoing part of the BTEC community to help us create these and recreate these qualifications. We really are very, very keen to hear from you. You will have an impact on what the final products look like going forward. So, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for coming to this session today. What I'd like to now is to open up the floor, first of all, for any questions that you would like to ask our panel, and failing that, I'll ask them maybe to comment on some of the things that have come in the presentation. So, any questions, observations, harangues? Yes.
Really quick. Well, in light of what we've just said in the main hall, that there's going to be a consultation on the validity of vocational qualifications. I mean, you maybe were aware of that or were not, but presumably that's going to have a big impact on what we can deliver or what they think are appropriate qualifications. So, I mean, that would be part of the consultation now, obviously.
Yeah, I think, I think with anybody and Steve or others who'd like to comment on what we think the impact of that consultation will be and what it is actually we're going to be focusing on.
Well, the Minister just announced there's going to be a consultation. We knew it was happening. I think in many ways this is broadly the way in which education policy is shifting at the moment, isn't it? It is about trying to clean up, if I could use that phrase, clean up much of the qualification system so that respective qualifications remain in there and move to the top of the agenda. That's in theory what's coming through from the DFE and through to BIS. And I think what's happened at 14 to 16 was inevitably going to have some traction, 16 to 19. If nothing else, we face, as you know, the annual summer ritual of complaints about the complexity of the qualification system. What's been added to that now, of course, is the belief that qualifications must get you somewhere. This was not an argument that was necessarily evident pre-recession, but has become very evident now. And it's something Rod and the team working on with the BTEC developments are very, very aware of, that one of the measures of success of a qualification is what kind of destination it's going to get you to, which is in itself quite hard, but even more difficult, what kind of returns can you expect? Because that's the kind of measure that's been applied for higher education, the graduate premium. We're starting to hear that now, the term premium being used for lots of qualifications. So we'll have to see quite what the qualification does. The experience with 14 to 16 has not been an easy experience. Many people in this room have been working very hard with trying to ensure qualifications get through the mangle, if I can put it that way, to ensure that they're still on the list. And I expect there'll be a similar process 16 to 19. But I think the virtues of it will be that we will have, as I say, probably a potentially cleaner system in the eyes of the user, the employers, and the rest of it. And I think the challenge for us is to ensure that we've got the right load in there in terms of destination, wage returns, and what the potential benefits are. And that's the challenge for the whole education system, as I think we all know.
Would anybody else like to comment on the question generally about what we think this focus will be?
I think from the vocational perspective, for me it's about actually where the journey is going long term. You've seen the big shift in HE. There's going to be more higher apprentices, more people moving into the vocational option. So actually what we've got to make sure in FE is that our qualifications are very employer informed early, not later, not an afterthought, and a proper involvement. So real discussion around the table about how we're developing our qualifications. That actually, for me, it's about real impact in terms of the evaluation. It's all about, are they going to get a job or can they create a wealth themselves? So I think the qualifications for me is about, has to be employer led, it has to be employer informed. Otherwise we're not actually creating economically viable young people leaving our organisations. So I think the onus is on us to make sure that we involve employers.
I mean, I think interestingly, I suspect that what the consultation will be about, and we'll know much more detail obviously soon, is also about the validity of vocational qualifications. I don't think, I mean, you know, the government can be quite teary-eyed about the impact and importance of vocational education. I think what I think will happen is around this, you know, what is the reliability of vocational qualifications, and how can we ensure that actually they are delivering the type of learner that we say they are. And I suspect that will be the focus of that particular consultation. But I think Dawn's actually right, it'll be in the context of what is the value add of the vocational pathways into employment and into social mobility. And I think you know, we should be very happy to engage with that, because I think there's a very good story to tell.
Yeah. I mean, I'd quite like to respond. Risk of being contentious, but I mean, I think we've got a great fixation in this country of tinkering with technical and vocational qualifications, and we often refer to other countries, Finland, Germany. If we take Germany, we look at Mercedes, we look at Bosch, we look at Siemens, and we think of top-notch quality. But the German technical and vocational system was actually based on the model that was in place in Britain in the late 40s, would you say? So, I mean, I do think there is a big fixation, and even within the UK itself, greater fixation of tinkering and tampering and undermining vocational qualifications in a way that perhaps doesn't exist in Scotland either. I mean, ScotVec has got very high credibility amongst employers, amongst universities, and it facilitates a destination for a variety of people, and it doesn't have the same fixation around age, that everything happens at 16. Suddenly at 16 you're competent at level 2, otherwise you're a failure. So I mean, but we are where we are. We're in a situation where we've got a national view that standards is a problem, and we've got a national view. I think it was not helpful of Wolf to talk about Mickey Mouse vocational qualifications. I mean, my spin in it is that very often organisations and awarding bodies work really closely together to put in place alternative vocational qualifications for that raft of young people at 14 to 16 for whom GCSE was not appropriate. So I mean, I think there's a historical context, and obviously in the consultation my view is we need to advocate the good, and there is much good, of many vocational qualifications.
I think that's my fear, is that, you know, there was until recently a huge take up from 14 to 16-year-olds in vocational qualifications, leading them through into post-16 education, and since Wolf and the Mickey Mouse qualifications, in many areas that's gone. And what I wouldn't like to see is that this consultation for post-16 does exactly the same, and takes away the opportunities for many young people who actually at 16 don't really know which vocation they want to go into, and still need the opportunity to learn and broaden their horizon.
I mean, what's very interesting is that there has been a huge amount of media coverage, as you can imagine, of Mickey Mouse vocational qualifications, reducing the number from 2,500 down to 150 or whatever that will be on the headline measures list. Interesting, our experience is that the deliverers, the people that are making the decision about what's right for their learners, are not walking away from vocational qualifications. In fact, this year we had more registrations than last year in schools at the end of the week. Consultation impact, and that's not they're finding time in the curriculum to do what's right for their learner, Now, there's an awful lot, there's a lot of curriculum to fit in over the next few years, so that's going to continue to be a big challenge. But I hope that what we'll see is that actually, even at post-16 as well, the sector will really be very proactive in ensuring that curriculum continues to be valued, appropriately.
I mean, it's been very interesting in the consultations that we've done so far, particularly talking to employers and the higher education sector, that emphasis on development of skills and being able to sort of manage the kind of employability skills, people coming through, being able to sort of do a piece of research or kind of get themselves together to complete their projects, get their work in on time, all the employability skills that are developed through the BTEC mode of learning, coming through very strongly as valuable. So wherever we need to move, depending on sort of what's happening politically, there's going to be a demand, and with the employers backing it, that gives us the strength to be able to go and say, look, this is we're doing what is required by the employers.
Let's take another question and see what that takes.
Well, it wasn't so much a question as really a comment about the value of the qualifications. My concern is very much that there seems to be an assumption that A-level is the only academic route into university. And I believe that fundamentally is not and should not be the case. And so it's a plea really that any development of BTEC national qualifications recognises that it is a very, very well trodden route into university. And I was surprised actually at the low numbers going on to university that you quoted, particularly the 20%. In my college last year, it was 86% of all national diploma students who went on to university. This year, it's slightly lower. They have been more affected by the new loans than the A-level students, but nevertheless, I do not believe there's any evidence that BTEC national students are any less successful at university, nor that they are retained less at university than A-level students are. And I don't think that is something that comes out of any government minister's mouth. So for me, it's fundamentally important that we recognise the set of skills and talents that our BTEC national students have, and that the qualification matches their needs. Because I know that many of the students in my college would not be successful were the course to be externally examined. They are successful because of the nature of the teaching and the assessment. Now, it doesn't mean the standards are low, it just means that they learn in different ways.
I mean, you didn't want to comment on that, I was furiously nodding. But
I mean, I would totally agree with you. I mean, I think Mike Tomlinson got it right, actually, because we don't all learn it and reach a particular standard at a particular age. We all learn differently, and we have all different learning styles, and our abilities develop and flourish at different ages. And I'm like you, 99%, I was saying to Mary earlier, of my level 3 students, and I've got 3,500 16 to 18-year-olds in my college, and many of whom progress into higher education in the college or at university, and 99% is of BTEC level 3 provision. So I think you're right, we have got an opportunity in this consultation to turn the tables and to make explicit what is good about high quality level 3 technical and vocational learning that develops those skills that very often in a more narrow route of learning like A levels, team working, people skills, networking skills, initiative, the sort of T-shaped individuals. So I support your argument, but it's up to us really to make that case in the consultation.
I can reinforce that. I've just spent 4 years out working in a university and came back into college life. And actually the ones that thrived most readily were those that came from a vocational route, because they had the research skills. They already knew how to do more independent learning. They were all-rounder, they were more resilient. And A-level students tended to be a little bit slower off the mark in terms of getting themselves up to speed. And I think it's our job in FE not to dumb down vocational qualifications. There's enough people out there doing that. I think what we've got to say, there is a parity, and actually delivering vocational education, whether it's in FE or in HE, demands a very high level of skill, because you've actually got to be practitioners to deliver great teaching, and that demands a very high level of teaching. So I think we've got to be careful and keep raising that as an argument.
I think the massive thing is that we as a group and the sector engage heavily with this consultation. You know, there is, if nothing else, there's an opportunity for us to articulate a different narrative, because there is not a broad enough narrative at the moment about the value of different educational routes.
I just say I think it's important that not only do we respond, but we encourage our employer colleagues to respond, because whatever they say works like it.
That is true. I think that is true. I mean, again, does anybody? I mean, how can we do that? How can we engage employers to argue on our behalf? Is that something that we feel is easy to do, or
It should be easy to do, because if they're convinced customers, then they'll want to advocate the case. If they're not, then what are we doing? I think the onus is on us to talk to those end users, convince them of the case, and then let them do our advocacy forward, because government will listen to them more readily than they'll listen to us.
I mean, I think you're absolutely right, because they have a greater role at the moment, and they will be listened to more actively than we will. I totally agree with you. However, my experience has been that very often employers don't really know what they want. I mean, some employers may do and may know what they want, but very often they can't articulate exactly what it is they want, other than the employability and the all-round skills. People turn up, they attend on time, they're punctual, they don't have an attitude, they dress appropriately, they know how to speak to a range of people. And that is a range of softer skills that actually can be developed more readily in a good vocational qualification. But I think your point is spot on, and there is something for us as a sector, and indeed the awarding bodies, to try and engage employers of the benefits of technical and vocational qualifications, and to respond as well.
There's a very positive thing that I'd say in support of that, is that yesterday the CBI published their annual education report.
Yes.
And I have to say I'm pretty impressed by it. They call explicitly for a broader narrative, a broader definition of what our education system should be delivering. And I think I saw a quote on Twitter that said essentially what was so impressive about what CBI have said is that it's a vision which is not about criticism. There's nothing that's critical of the sector or people who are delivering or learners. It's just a positive articulation of how we need to have a broader narrative about the types of learners and what it is that they're achieving. And I think the CBI is actually pretty hungry to get behind something that's an alternative story, rather than just A-levels the whole time.
Definitely.
Any other questions? Yes.
I think I would also like to make a plea to BTEC really that we don't lose the personalisation and flexibility that comes inherent in BTEC programmes. We run over 30 different types of assessment method for BTECs, multiple different stranded pathways. I don't want BTECs at level 3 to become a vocational A-level. That's not what's needed.
Absolutely.
And I hope we would resist robustly any attempt to do that. Our BTEC learners need something different. This provides parity in that something different. And I think we really ought to be fighting back really hard on any attempt to make BTECs vocational A-levels.
Mary, do you want to comment on that?
Yes, I absolutely agree, because then what gives them their individuality. I mean, I'd just be interested to ask what you think might be the danger, what would be the things that would make it look like
my hotspot is the external assessment. That's really my hotspot. Our learners, and having worked with BTEC for over 20 years, I've seen the external assessments come in and then go out again, and I can't say that I highly rated them at the time. Neither can I say the learners highly rated them at the time. I think it's an external measure imposed upon us in an attempt to get some kind of measure, because we're not trusted. The fact of the matter is, for BTECs, you have to be very highly skilled, you have to know the industry as well as the subject inside and out, and we are very, very good at what we do with BTECs as a sector. And I think we absolutely need to resist external assessment. I realise that's quite controversial, but the learners who choose BTEC for a reason. If they want an external assessment, they might be choosing a different qualification set.
So in terms of the sort of the standard, if we're saying teacher assessment is the key for BTEC, and it was interesting that there was such a high vote there for 47% for kind of improving or tightening up, let's say, on the standards verification.
I mean, I share your view. However, I think in the current climate we have to be pragmatic. And I think if we can manage through the consultation to talk about a form of external assessment rather than an exam, I think that would be advantageous for us. Because external assessments probably happen in most colleges through the involvement of some employers or colleagues from the Chamber of Commerce or whatever. We could weave in some form of externality. I mean, I can give you examples of what I do in our own college with our business students pitching to employers, and it's all part of their programme. Or
See, now I think that's exceptional, that's really good, but that isn't the kind of external assessment that's actually been imposed on us in the past, where it's a preset assignment, gets sent to you, sometimes with a mark scheme, sometimes without.
Yeah.
That for me isn't what BTECs are about, and it shouldn't be.
No.
Now, if we have an external assessment which still builds in flexibility of delivery, I think there's an argument for that.
It's the biggest challenge I think to us all, because we have to protect the credibility of the qualification. We have to make sure that it is the right qualification to help people progress. We have to respond for good or ill to some of the pressure. At the same time, we must not destroy what is at the kernel of what makes a BTEC and what actually the sector does with the BTEC so unique. It cannot be a vocational A level. It has to be equal but different, whatever that means.
Sorry.
No, I'm just going to say very quickly, I spent a happy hour or two last weekend reading Michael Gove's speech on assessment.
Yes,
okay.
You need to get out
but,
now.
I know. But I tell you the danger in there that I sensed in there, because his very strong argument was that external assessment, in effect blind assessment, is much better for social mobility because you come at it in a sense with complete clean sheet. Now what worries me is that the political debate is moving towards external assessment as being much more persuasive of social opportunity and mobility, and unless we can make that argument for BTECs, then I think we're still going to face problems. Sorry, Dawn.
No, I do agree. That's a good point.
I was going to say there's probably an opportunity here that BTEC probably Pearson's want to take on really. Within the HE sector, we have quite a lot of externality. Coming to review the panels, and perhaps it's something that we take on in that way and be far more proactive in terms of saying, we can actually assess from a panel perspective.
Absolutely.
It's very quick, it's very efficient, it leaves the learners, it leaves the teachers with complete responsibility, ultimately robust.
The external scrutiny, I think, is absolutely key. That doesn't necessarily mean external assessment, and I think that's a really excellent point.
Okay, thank you. And please do keep, what I would urge you, we feel very strongly about this, is to continue to engage with us through this process and through the BTEC co-creation community we're going to look at, because this is such a finessed and important argument. We need the voice of the sector well represented in it. I think we're coming to. Has anybody else got a final question that they'd like to pose to the panel? I've been looking at my watch for a number of reasons. One of the reasons is that there is an announcement that was embargoed until 3 o'clock today. I just want to make sure that I'm absolutely clear that we pass that. It's a DFE announcement that was that actually. So I know we have a colleague from the DFE here today, so you can testify it is 10 minutes past the embargo time. So the DFE today has published the headline measures list for level 2 BTECs. So the process that we've all been going through in terms of the qualifications being looked at level 2 and their robustness and resilience. We've lived under the shadow of the term of Mickey Mouse qualifications for quite some time, and sometimes the characterisation that vocational qualification is not valued and is not going to be encouraged in schools. Well, they have published the headline measures list today. 120, 130 odd qualifications are on that list, which will be recognised as headline measures. And I appreciate this is a school's measure, but nevertheless it's indicative, I think, of actually the sense that the government does value vocational pathways. 60 of the qualifications on that list are BTECs, or BTEC qualifications, which is by far and away the most significant number by an absolute order of magnitude. So we are confident that BTEC as a brand remains very, very robust and resilient, that it is respected, that actually when we get out the other side of consultation exercises, that with proper engagement don't have to be too damaging and can be positive. That the future BTEC remains a very, very strong one in both schools and colleges. But we believe passionately is that we need to work with the sector on that response to the next wave of consultation to make sure that the voice is properly heard and that the brand, and the qualification remains the valuable one that it is today. So thank you very much indeed for coming today and finding your way down here. Please do, on your way out, there's an iPad screen at the back where we would urge you to touch a smiley face saying like, dislike, or sack this man. On your way out, please do take advantage of that opportunity to give some feedback. But thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Sorry, I almost didn't afford it. Thank you also to our panel who've given up their time to help us today with this. We really do appreciate it, and I think it's the kind of support that there is for BTEC in the sector. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you.